Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a glorious day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. Today, I'm talking about Dr. Ben Carson. And I'm asking the question, have you ever wondered why he jumps Jim Crow for the Republican Party? It is a question that I've had for quite some time. I remember in my teaching career, Dr. Ben Carson was one of the people that we studied during faculty meeting when we would study best practices in education. We would look at people from different professions who had written books and had talked about how they successfully dealt with patients or clients or people in the field that they worked in and the things they had done that worked. As a teacher, you have to deal with the children, their parents, the other teachers, the principal, the superintendent, the Board of Education, and the community. So you bring in as many resources as you can in order to get the best practices for how to deal with your situation. So Dr. Carson was one of the ones that we studied, and it was a white counselor that selected his book. And she was just so high on Dr. Carson, Dr. Carson, Dr. Carson. It was all about Dr. Carson. This was a conservative white woman. And in leading the discussion about Dr. Carson, we, the black teachers, would try to have input to say, yes, we know him, and shared what an inspiration he was to the black community. Well, she pretty much shut us down. It was like Dr. Carson was no longer a black person as we knew a black man to be. It was like he belongs to us now. He's on our plantation. That was the feel I got from it in the faculty meeting. And then she would do her counseling sessions with the children. She would bring up Dr. Carson and how he had brought himself up from poverty and how he was this very successful doctor. And she personified white people's ability to pick out the black people that they like and separate them from the rest of the black people. Still, he was well known and respected in the black community as a doctor at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, and he was the first doctor to separate conjoined twins, and he had successfully separated these twins. So he was the toast of the town. Everybody was talking about him. But when a white person is making a big deal about a black person, my dad used to say, it's a dead cat on the line. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but I just found it unusual that this white woman was making a big deal over Ben Carson. That was before I knew that he had hooked up with the Republican Party. Now, up to the time that the counselor started bringing up Ben Carson's name every chance she got, I had pretty much thought of him as being politically neutral. Her fascination with Ben Carson was just strange to me. And I don't believe that I'm the only black person that didn't get it, because black doctors normally don't get tied up in politics to the point that one of the parties embraces them and they become the keynote speaker for every event. And that's what Ben Carson became. He was groomed for black America to look up to him and see him as credible. He was this great doctor who did this great thing. He is a pediatric surgeon, and he performed the surgery that had never been done before. He separated conjoined twins successfully. So Ben Carson's star was on the rise. Also, and this is very important too, Ben Carson was presented to white people as one of the good ones. We can trust him. Now, this is where I listen to Jason Black. I know y'all don't like Jason Black. Some of y'all don't like Jason Black. When Jason Blake is on his game, when he's standing on business, as they say, and he's talking politics and he's breaking down white supremacy and how it works, he's excellent at that. Now, when he started talking about Sierra and Keke Palmer and all these black women and meddling into black women's business, I don't listen to that. But he does understand white supremacy. And one thing he says is that white supremacy doesn't take a holiday. And I agree with that. And he says that white supremacy cultivate tools, and I'm paraphrasing it, but they cultivate tools in our community, probably in other communities too. But they definitely cultivate tools in the black community. Now, I believe that Ben Carson was cultivated as a tool. And they do it over a period of time so that when the time comes for them to activate the use of that person, then the public has been prepared for that person. So in the case of Ben Carson, typically we wouldn't know anything about him, even if he was doing great work. He's a doctor. He's at a big hospital in Baltimore. So we wouldn't normally know about that. But somehow his profile was raised to the point that we knew about him and we were very proud of him. So that was a useful tool for white supremacy. Slavery is a permanent and unmovable scar on America's soul. It is the thing that can bring America down. And what America did for many years was downplay it and diminish it. It didn't mean anything. The Civil War wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. Black people are criminals. Black people are lazy. Black people are not useful. But the truth has a way of coming out. So slavery continues to push its way to the top of the American narrative. Everybody knows about it by now, and black people won't stop talking about it. But it's a scar on America's soul, and it's one they can't lie their way out of. You can't outlie slavery. It was here, it was done, we're still here, and we're still talking about it. So what they've always needed is a credible black person who is a descendant of slavery to tell the world slavery wasn't that bad. What is Ben Carson always doing? He's always comparing something to slavery and trying to make whatever it is worse than slavery. He's trying to do something that America has never been able to do, which is to diminish the role of slavery in American history. His job is to always downplay slavery and make something that's happening currently more serious, worse than slavery. Obamacare was worse than slavery. Not long ago, he said something else was worse than slavery. So they're taking a black man who is a descendant of slavery and using him to say it wasn't that bad. What Obama did is worse than slavery. Or what the Democrats are doing now is worse than slavery. So he is that useful tool that continues to attack slavery. But how do we get here? White supremacy elevated Ben Carson, who is actually a trained doctor and who seemed like a nice man. Seemed like a nice person. Believable, soft-spoken, nice, likable. But some kind of way they got to him, and I guess they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Or maybe they duped him. I don't know. I just know that they took a very likable, handsome, trained physician who is of African descent and used him really to turn against his own people's history. Now, I'm never going to put him in the category of Clarence Thomas, but I do believe something happened. But listen to this Dr. Ben Carson story about separating conjoined twins.
Then you got this other little thug punk, Ben Carson. 90% of black folks ain't never heard of him. So you mean these redneck white folks love him that much? He's that high? What was his claim to fame?
Surgeon.
No, it was more than that. He's the first prime that disconnected Siamese twins from the head. That never happened before in the history of the planet. He wasn't even in the room when that happened. So that's what research do. It was that team of 87 German doctors. And they thought they was able to do this. So they brought him in the room because he was from South Africa. In South Africa. We all know before black folk took over, South Africa had a nuclear bomb. You heard Nelson Mandela? You heard nobody talk about it. Where'd it go? Where did it go?
Good question. So to clarify, you said Ben Carson was from South Africa?
No, the person they operated on was
From South Africa.
South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. And they didn't want nobody to be able to say they was experimenting on black folks. Now let's get back to just plain old nigger shit. If he did what they say he did, how come he's never been nominated for a Nobel Prize in medicine? I didn't say get one. You know, when they pick out the #1 football player in America this year, it'll be 10 people nominated. He's never been nominated. We ain't talking about a Nobel Prize. He's never been nominated. That's why you see that look on his face. And then when they tried to make him feel he's important, you can't duck a lie. When he came to the prayer breakfast of the president and said, Obamacare is worse than slavery. Did you know by the time he got back to Johns Hopkins, he was fired?
Wow.
Moved his stuff out. Johns Hopkins get more government money than any country in the world. Don't mess with this titty. He's already been paid to give the commencement address. 2 weeks later, they say, keep the money, we don't want you around here.
Wow.
That's who he is.
Wow.
Now, this is the late Dick Gregory, and, you know, for some people would say, some people might say this sounds like some people might say this sounds like a conspiracy theory. Some of what he says I know is true. I'm not sure that all of it is true. But what he said here is that Ben Carson wasn't even in the room when that surgery was done. Now, if I were just going to do some add-ons, I would say that if Dr. Ben Carson did something so extraordinary, something that had never been done before, he's saying that he should have been nominated for a Nobel Prize. I'm saying that there should at least be a portrait of him hanging in Johns Hopkins Hospital, like there is of Dr. Vivian Thomas, who did the heart surgery in Johns Hopkins, and he has been honored a number of times. Dr. Carson has not been. On top of that, he's right about that. Ben Carson went to that prayer breakfast, I believe it was in 2013, talking about Obamacare was worse than slavery. I don't know what all, and he also said some homophobic stuff. He also said some things that were considered homophobic. But after he got back from that prayer breakfast, they had his resignation waiting for him, and they walked him out of that hospital. And he had been scheduled to do the commencement address at Johns Hopkins. And they said, well, you can keep the money, but we don't want you speaking on this platform. So I just think it's interesting that if he did what they say he did, separating those conjoined twins, he should have been nominated for something. And at the minimum, he should have been revered at Johns Hopkins, and there should be a portrait of him in that hospital. Also, the whole thing about separating those conjoined twins did not turn out to be the success that they said. Patrick and Benjamin Binder were conjoined twins, joined at the head, born in Germany in February 1987, and separated at Johns Hopkins Children's Center on September 6, 1987. They were the first twins to be successfully separated by neurosurgeon Ben Carson, assisted by London M. Long of Baltimore, Maryland. Although the surgeons were able to separate the boys, both were left profoundly disabled. Patrick remained in a coma until his death sometime in the last decade, while Benjamin recovered to a certain extent, but is still developmentally delayed. So the reason why Dr. Ben Carson seems to be kind of a flunky for the Republican Party could be because there might be some truth to what Dick Gregory said. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying that for his accomplishments to be as great as they say it is, we should see more results. It should be manifested in the awards and the recognition that he has received from the medical profession. So anyway, I wonder about Dr. Ben Carson because to me, he is a disappointment. There is no reason for a black American man whose family members came through slavery to be out talking about slavery wasn't a big deal. So there really is no reason for him to be jumping Jim Crow. But what say you? Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.